Would you look at the time? Fast spent, but it's still good time for Press Pass. This is what's coming up tonight.
The politics, drama and dragging of Kenocourt's private life into the glaring eye of the public.
A nominated MCA in the Nairobi County Assembly spills the beans on her love affair with the late Kibra MP.
We look at the late Kenocourt story as told. Was it taken a bit too far?
Tunaona media inatumiwa
What you see there is just a sample of opinions from around the country on whether the dramatic arrest from around the country on corruption suspects is just to play to the camera or gallery rather, and the media is being used for the same. Just before we meet our panelists, I'd like us to talk to our correspondent in the coastal area, that is Kevin Mutai, and he's been following a story that broke in the last hour, and that is in Bamburi area and Kwabulo area, where there was an attack by a criminal gang, and they were attacking residents at random with crude weapons, and that left several people injured. And we'd just like to get an update on this. We've seen some of the pictures that are doing rounds and circulating. We can confirm from our correspondent Kevin Mutai, what is the very latest now?
Well, thank you so much, Mark. What I can tell you is that the latest report that we are receiving right now is that 2 people have already been discharged. That is out of the 8 who were injured during the attack. But we are told that 3 of them are in critical conditions and are currently being attended to at the Coast General Hospital that is in Mombasa County. Mark, we're also learning that the Mombasa County Police Commander Johnson Ipara is currently on the ground, heading the operation in attempts by security officials to flush out the members of the criminal gang that attacked the areas of Kwabulo and Bamburi Mwisho. Just a recap of what happened earlier is that at around 8:30, between 8:30 and 9 this evening, members of a criminal gang attacked residents between those 2 areas, that is in Kisauni constituency, and we are told that several were injured, and most of them sustained panga cuts on the head, some in the hands, and even in the stomach. And we are told that one of the victims is a border rider who was around that area. Right. And Mark, as I say, 2 people have already been discharged, and we are closely following up on the updates that will be coming out from the security personnel on the ground. But what I can tell you is that the manhunt for those who perpetrate or those who conducted that particular attack is currently going on, and police are rather manning all the corners within that vicinity where the attack happened. Right. And just something that is also of key concern here, Mark, to note is that these criminal gang are, according to residents, they're suspecting to be members of either Wakaliwao or Wakaliwa Kwanza criminal gang, and they're saying that the boys are aged between 15 years and 24, and they are under influence of either alcohol or drugs because they're just attacking residents anyhowly. The shops are closed, and but the most important thing is that the authorities are currently on the ground and are manning the situation. We will be bringing you up to speed on the developments of the current ongoings in the area. Back.
Thank you very much. Kevin Mutai there, just giving us the update on the very latest. Some people have been discharged, and the security officer, the commissioner in charge of that area, that is Kwabulo and Bamburi Mwisho area in Kisauni, have responded to this particular issue and have it under control. At least we are made to believe. We'll see what becomes of all this in terms of responding to it tomorrow as we follow up on that. Now let's meet our guests and our panelists for the night. I wouldn't call them guests really, because they've all been on the show before, and I really appreciate their time and availability. Eric Odwor, he is the Kenya Union of Journalists Secretary General, as well as a sub-editor here at the East African, and quite keen for this conversation tonight because there is a journalist who has been arrested and is also a contributor to the East African. We'll be talking about that a bit later. This is a situation in Tanzania. It is is appalling in terms of media freedom. And we have Julie Masiga. She's a commissioning editor at the Conversation Africa, and you've also perhaps seen one or two of her columns on the Standard. And yes, now going to be a regular contributor on Press Pass. And next to her is the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya, that is David Omoyo. Thank you so much for coming on, and in your patriotic attire this evening, that is with the Kenya flag. Asante sana. So let's start off with views on the news. There has been many arrests over the last few weeks of senior government officials facing various corruption-related cases. The arrests by government agencies have been captured in very dramatic scenes. For views on the news this week, we asked whether people feel media is being used by the government to show the fight against corruption is picking momentum.
Media is a very important tool when it comes to fight against corruption. Na ninaona ya kwamba wale ambao watu wanalegea kidogo ni maofisi za kutafuta ushahidi. Maofisi kama za DPP na pia upande wa koti. Maana baada ya pia kuangaziwa ya kwamba mtu fulani ama kiongozi fulani ameiba, hiyo maneno inaishia kotini, haturudi kuiona tena.
Sheria ni mtu maskini. Mtu tajiri hana sheria. Mtu kaiba kuku kafungwa miaka 7 miaka 10 kama ameua. Lakini mtu kaiba mamilioni ya pesa anaweka bond, akitoka hiyo kesi haifuatiliwi tena.
Hiyo kesi ikienda paka mwisho tutajua mwenye hatia ni nani. Na kama ameshikwa na bilioni 5, wacha azitoe, ziweze kutumika kwa Kenya. Ziwende kutumika kwa hawa watu wa chini. Pesa isibaki huko kwao peke yao. Na media wafuate masharti, wakishika mtu wanafuatilia hiyo story paka mwisho.
Watu wanashtakiwa about corruption, baadaye wanaachiliwa kwa bond, na baadaye hiyo kesi iendelee tena. Hii imekuwa ni changamoto kwetu wananchi, juu tunaona media inatumiwa kuficha mambo ambayo yanafanyika katika serikali ya saa hii.
Naona ni kama media inatumika vibaya, ni kama ni njia tu ya kufumbaza wananchi, eti kama wanashika watu pesa inarudishwa, na watu wanaenda kotini wanaachiliwa na mambondi, na pia ni kama hiyo pesa ni kama irudi, wananchi hajui kama inarudi hata wakiachiliwa.
During President Kibaki's reign, wale watu ambao walihusishwa na hii mambo ya ufisadi, tulikuwa tunaona wamekamatwa, wamepelekwa kotini, wamechanjiwa, na tukaona wengine hata walikuwa wanaambiwa wa step aside. Na kuna wengine even after stepping aside, kesi ikionekana kama ilikuwa na wakamata, hawakuwa wanarudishwa kazini. Lakini what are we seeing today? Jameni, unasikia ni kama media ndiyo sasa inatumika kublow mambo out of proportion, vile hii serikali yetu tukufu inapambana na hii mambo ya ufisadi.
Tunaona kamata wakubwa wakishikwa, lakini hakuna siku tumesikia pesa imerudishwa, na wanawachiliwa na board, wanarudi kazini.
Kuhusu hii mambo inaendelea ya watu kushikashikwa, unashikwa, unapelekwa kotini, umeiba 588 million, unapewa cash bill ya 15 million. To some extent, it's neither here nor there. It's just like side shows.
Hii yote ni mchezo ya kutuchezea sisi wananchi wa kawaida. Hii pesa ndio inafaa itengeneze nchi yetu, mahospitali, walimu walipwe vizuri, madaktari walipwe vizuri, na manasi shule zikuwe renovated, lakini hii pesa bado ni ya matajiri. Hii yote kamata ni mchezo tu.
They are using media to platform the public that they are doing things, they are doing something, but actually they are doing nothing.
Wanatumia kitengo ya media kupumbaza watu, kwa sababu hiyo kitu sio kitu, kwa sababu kuna watu wengine wanakamatwa lakini wakamatwa mbele hadharani kama vile wanafanya.
Si kama wananchi tunaangalia kwa runinga, tunaona kila wakati watu wamepelekwa kotini, lakini baada ya kuitika na kutoka hatusikii hiyo kitu. Hiyo kitu ni kama inapigwa, hatuelewi vile inaenda.
Sioni kama ni kweli media inatumiwa na serikali, sababu media iko huru na inafanya kazi yake ipasavyo. Kwa hiyo mimi naunga mkono kazi ya media.
Media wanafanya kazi yao vizuri kabisa. Kwa hivyo inatakikana wakishikwa, wakipelekwa kotini, waonyeshe mfano koti, mmoja wao afungwe, wasitoe faini, lakini afungwe ndio wajulie kuwa media nao pia wanafanya kazi zao na serikali inafanya kazi yake kuhusu mambo ya corruption.
Just some of the views on what has come to be known as Kamata Kamata Fridays. And it's funny, Eric, how it's been said that, in fact, every Friday, newsrooms are waiting for that call, to just, especially if it's a dry day. Is there a concern from your perspective as a journalist on how the pattern it's taken over time?
I don't think it's our concern as a journalist on what happens, because it is the responsibility of the media to report to the public what is happening. And listening to what the viewers are talking about, I think we need to have more media literacy forums with the members of the public so they get to understand what the media can do and what the media cannot do. Because once a suspect has been arrested, and the media has reported, and this suspect has been arraigned in court again, and the media has also reported that so-and-so was arrested and has been raised in court and has been charged, and these are the charges. The media does not have any powers again on what happens with that case. For us, what we can do is just to continue reporting and doing follow-ups. What I know that probably the media can be accused of is lack of consistency when it comes to follow-ups of some of these stories. Because when they stop some of these stories, when they have been taken to court, sometimes we forget and jump to the next story and do not continue with the story that's already been taken to court. And I think that's where the frustration is coming from. So we believe maybe as to improve on the good work that the journalists are doing, we need to improve on how we are going to do follow-ups so that when these cases are continuing, I know there's some cases whereby it might be difficult for journalists actually to follow them because once the matter is in court again, there are also challenges when it comes to reporting. But where possible, journalists will continue giving follow-up so that the public knows actually what the status of these cases once they've taken to court.
Eric has mentioned literacy on these matters because you've heard the frustration, and perhaps it can be informed with some legal background that yes, you'll have someone who's arrested and arraigned in court, and then on some big scam, maybe 588, that's one of the latest, and then they're released on a bond or bail, and you don't hear any of it. Just to explain to the people that it's not quite the media's doing, but there's a frustration that comes from them following these stories.
Yes, it's true. Personally, I think that economic crime should not be bailable offenses. I think you should not be granted bail. You're being accused of stealing large amounts of money, and then your bail is maybe 15 million shillings. Then the next day you turn up with the 15 million shillings and you go home. It kind of defeats the purpose of, obstructs the path of justice, in my opinion. But that's the way cases go. It is economic crimes are bailable offenses. You can be let out on bail, on bond, and your case can continue as you are outside of the court process. That's normal, we know that happens. But for the frustration, I think beyond reporting what happens in court and giving people information and even following up, we need to give them context. Perhaps the history of economic crimes in Kenya, have there been any convictions since the beginning of time, since we became a republic? How many people have stepped aside? What is likely to happen? What perhaps should the DPP do? Like give a broader picture of what's happening as opposed to just following politicians in and out of the court process and reporting the amounts of money and the bails and the bonds. That brings the frustration because you're left feeling helpless. You're like, he's accused of committing this crime. He was arraigned in court, he was charged, and he was let out on bond. And the media has told me that. And then the next day they told me he went for a mention in 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, he appeared in court. His trial was suspended or was postponed, adjourned. And you're not getting a feeling of the full picture. What is likely to happen, what has happened before, and what perhaps should be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with these are some of the pictures of suspects who have been in court, and they love these pictures. I mean, and to be honest, they're actually also good pictures for us to show in the sense you see a suspect, an image of power in handcuffs or on the dock and in the dock, and that sends a message that you're not too far from the arm of the law. But then again, they're released, and then people feel it's a hopeless thing to continue with these. But there's the issue of narratives. She's talked about the context in history, but the issue of narratives, and there being an accusation of over-reliance on these investigative agencies by newsrooms. We know as much as they want us to know. And we need to get, as much as we draw the wider context, have other sources. What's your view on this?
Three broad issues. Number one is we should be careful
not to shoot the messenger in all this, that the media is just a messenger.
Yes.
So the excitement about Kamata Fridays in the newsroom is normal. A few years ago, everybody waited for the 1 p.m. bulletin for news from State House. So it's normal to know that around this time, a big news source will perhaps release something, and that will go on and on. So I think that's entirely normal. Thirdly is that it is news because it disrupts the way of life. When you get a cabinet secretary and the peers and all that of treasury arrested, that is news.
Yes.
You would be beaten more if you do not cover it. What I have slight issues with is that not just over-reliance, but a certain semblance of mercenary journalism, where a while before the people are arrested, you see very intimate details about what we should have happened and all that, and then there's about sources at DCI, a confidential person from ESCC and all that. You realize that this was a leak, and the media is being used to prosecute someone in public space before they are arrested and all that. And then when they are arrested and taken to court, you find that those details are not there. So ideally about the media carrying the story and all that, that is the work of the media.
Right.
That is disruptive. But the selective usage, I think there is an attempt to use the media to sanitize certain things. That is what worries me a bit.
Well, also, just, and this is to anyone who wishes to respond to this particularly, is the narrative that I've mentioned earlier. And there's some who say this issue of questioning Kamata Friday is a narrative of those who are on the receiving end to start off this conversation that we should question these Friday arrests. There is a legal angle where someone is, has a right to only be in custody not longer than 24 hours and then released. Is it something that we should bring up? But then again, it'll look like you are countering the fight on corruption.
Okay, Mark, there is this cliche of damn when you do it and damn when you don't do it. Huh? Suppose, let's say, for example, the Governor Ferdinand Waititu was arrested and arraigned in court. Suppose he's arrested, that story does not appear anywhere in the media. He goes to court, that story does not appear anywhere in the media. I'm sure the public will be angry at the media and they'll be saying that the media has been compromised and therefore the media is not telling them the truth.
Yes.
So, that's the dilemma. So the issue is that the media has gotten a responsibility to please anyone. We do stories as and when they break. We do not make stories. When a governor has been arrested, is it true that a governor has been arrested? And what David is saying, that you'll always get some feelers. I'll have a problem when they don't happen. That's when you'll question the media that you are spreading propaganda and fear. But when it goes ahead and happens and a governor is arrested and taken to court,
from DCI or DPP,
that means that journalists, I will say that we say it in newsroom that you have your ears on the ground. You know what is happening around you. You have correct sources.
Yes.
But if you're a journalist who actually you're just sitting there, things are happening, you are not aware. Next time you hear a governor has been arrested, you have gone, there's no story. This governor, because basically what will happen actually, it will even happen rooms for propaganda and rumors given that this era of social media.
Yes.
Because what will happen, a governor will be arrested, there'll be a news, people will start reporting about it in the social media. And when these stories are reported in the social media, people will always want to verify from the mainstream or legacy media. Suppose this is happening and all these stories are happening in the social media and WhatsApp groups and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, but there is no source or there is no such stories in the legacy media. What will we be getting ourselves into? We will be getting ourselves in a sense where the public will panic. Actually, there will be even more frustrations. But so long as these stories are there, and probably they have seen them being posted in social media, and somebody is able to verify and see that legacy media actually also has that story, that it means that you will also be able to arrest chances and fear of misinformation and propaganda.
Do we need to be careful about the narratives that could be at play behind the scenes?
Normally I say that I normally go for truth above objectivity, but I think this is a place where you have to be absolutely objective, where you're in the middle, reporting, giving both sides of the story. I would disagree that the media is just a messenger. We cannot just be a messenger. We're recording history. We have to, as I said before, we have to provide context. We have to give people somebody to direct their frustrations and their anger at.
Yes, yes.
If we're just saying a governor has been arrested, okay, a governor has been arrested. And like you say, by the time he was arrested, maybe hours before, people on social media already knew he was going to be arrested. So why are we playing catch up and reporting exactly what everybody else knows? We have to go beyond that and give a broader angle to that story.
Right.
Like I say, the history, the cost of economic crimes in this country, governance issues, give the DPP perhaps some ideas of how he might be able to handle this thing in terms of public relations, in terms of appeasing the fears and frustrations of the people. We can't just be straight up reporting, giving people information, and then leaving them with nothing to do with it. We have to go beyond that.
Beyond that. Yeah. Finalize this.
Yes, my problem with that, I mean, reporting arrests and all that is okay. My problem is the serialization based on certain sources, because then the media falls flat on the principle of objectivity and right of reply. Sources at DCI told us a senior person traveled, a senior politician. So you mentioned people across 3 or 4 pages without talking to those people, ideally.
To be honest, would those people want to respond at this time?
But
that's
okay, honest, the point is,
yeah.
The point is now you are talking about DCI told us this and all
yes.
that, isn't it?
Yes.
If any time, any editor, when you get a dossier about someone, you tell them that we have a dossier and all that. So now by getting a dossier and going to run it, isn't it? Remember, the dossier will mention you about a meeting that took place, money that was wired to a bank in Westlands, all these things that you've been running in the papers. My point is, my challenge is, the moment you run that, all right, you're engaging in mercenary journalism. We are mentioning people, offices, institutions, air tickets and all that, isn't it? You're not talking to any of those mentioned. You are relying on the single source.
Wouldn't the natural response be deny, and even at some point try to decide?
Allow them to deny. Journalism says if you call them and they denied, say that we attempted and they said no, isn't it? But what we are saying now...
that journalists don't have actual sources. They're relying on people who plant stories purely.
No, I am saying that when you get a story, some of these very detailed stories,
yes.
that have, they mention people, places, institutions and all that, isn't it? And you run the stories entirely as they are from that one source, you should give that person a right to deny.
He calls it mercenary journalism.
Mark,
I would say this. Suppose someone should disapprove what we've said before. And I could have said that some of these stories you can only disapprove when they don't happen. And I think so far, at least most of these stories have been 99% actually happened. So journalists do not actually, I don't think we do single sourcing. And I know if you get a story from DCI, or just a tip of what's happening, you'll use other sources to verify what is happening. So I don't think if it's accurate to say that probably we do single sourcing of stories. You get a story from DCI, obviously you check with your sources at EACC to find out if such investigations actually existed. You'll also use your sources at DPP just to find out if the DPP is also preparing to prosecute this, because there's what we call multi-agency team that actually work on all these things. So if you get probably a story you've been given by DPP, you lose with other agencies to verify what is happening, because the truth is when one agency gives you the story, they won't give you the details, because again also there is a competition among these agencies. So probably if you get a story from DPP, they'll want to give you a story that actually makes the DPP to be the most hardworking agency in that particular group. So you use that also to get the angle from ESCC, the angle from DCI, the angle from National Police.
Although right now they seem very much in chorus.
Yes. And that is the trick.
Yes.
You say that sources are DCI, another source at ESCC, and we confirm. You see now what has happened is that you have mentioned 3 institutions and all that. There is no face, there is no statement you have relied on, sources, our
government sources,
and
more
all
or less.
that. See now what has happened is that now then you have entirely made that, we can call it fiction. Because you have mentioned, you can say that someone spoke,
yes,
or we got a leak from this and this, or we have this OB number, and then we got another source to confirm all this, isn't it? Or we saw a letter and all that. But when you mention about 3 big institutions, DPP, ESCC, and DCI, isn't it? And all you do is mention sources, our source, an informant. Have you not failed? Because at least in all those 3, if you had one source, say that we had this maybe from the DCI,
an actual source,
and then we spoke to DPP who said that the file is present. But when you rely on anonymous sources across 3 big institutions,
are you questioning the source?
Yes,
the credibility of the source.
Yes, and the spirit behind it. Actually, even the journalist himself, that if you're going to rely on a source, and you can now call ESCC and say, a source has informed me that you have a file, isn't it? Then you can say, I called this office who said true, isn't it? But when you mention source,
You are dealing with three institutions, and all of them you're using the word source and all that. You're not being fair to your readers.
Basically, what happens is that when you are sourcing for this information, some of this information, people who give this information, most of them are not actually authorized to speak to the media. And therefore, sometimes you also need to protect your sources. Because otherwise, if you expose your source, the source will not give you the news the following day. So you must find a way how you are also going to defend and also to protect these sources so that you continuously benefit from them. And from my experience is, majority of these sources are actually very junior people. Senior people actually just come in and just give approval. But most sometimes you'll hear that the person who gives you the story is an investigative officer who is probably has the file, who will tell you this is what we've investigated, and this is our what we are going to recommend to our boss. So by the time the boss has this file, sometimes even these bosses are not even aware of what is going on because their juniors are working on this file. So you as a journalist, if you have got good sources, and I said, a journalist, you can always prosper if you have good sources at every organization that matters, depending on a particular matter you are handling. Yes. So if you don't have sources, you can't call yourself a journalist.
All right, let's rest this here, and it's not in the name of trying to kill this story. But just to get to the next point, and we need to take a break. And we asked earlier whether the Ken Okoth story, this is after his death, the details were coming up, if it was taken a bit too far. And Nasira, she responded online. She said, not just far, but over-exaggerated. In fact, you people forgot if Kenya exists. Ken must be angry with you and at you. And George Somo, you say, what if in you asking, you take it too far? In you asking this very question, whether we had taken this story a bit too far, is in itself taking it too far? It's quite a sensitive topic. We're getting into that after the break.
Discover the all-new Nivea Nourishing Cocoa Lotion, specially formulated with Nivea's Deep Moisture Serum and Africa's natural cocoa for 48-hour deep moisture. Glowing, radiant skin with Nourishing Cocoa Lotion from Nivea. Get 48-hour deep moisture from the new range of Nivea body lotions.
Nation FM. More music and less talk. Nairobi 96.3, Mombasa 101.5, Meru 93.9, Nyeri 104.9, Eldoret 102.7, and Nakuru on 97.7. Follow us on social media on Facebook at Nation FM, Instagram at Nation FM, and on Twitter at Nation FM KE. Nation FM. More music and less talk.
Livestock is one of the main sources of income here in Niger, and a lot of entrepreneurs are cashing in from rearing these animals.
Africa is suffering from a high rate of deforestation, and Uganda is no exception. Could bamboo be the solution to stemming this tide of deforestation and help the pearl of Africa's economy grow as well?
It's not surprising why more and more businesses are advertising on social media. But is being a social media influencer as easy as it seems?
Super Loaf, slices of life.
It is always on the edge. It is always football time.
Get an HD decoder, dish kit, plus 2 months of DSTV Family for only 4,999 shillings.
Welcome back to Press Pass. On to the next issue, and this is what kicked off a big kerfuffle following the death of Kibra MP Ken Okoth. May his soul rest in peace. And in this, we are not in any way trying to be disrespectful to the family, and we, of course, condole with the family. But this is a story that was handled by the media and with some reservations from the audience, and that's why we are revisiting it. Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko claimed to know that of a love affair of the late legislator in Nairobi MCA Ann Dhumbi, with whom they are said to have gotten a child. This was all last week during one of Kibra MP Ken Okoth's memorial service, the late memorial service at Moi Girls School in Nairobi. This is what he said.
Mwaka wa 2013 Ken aliponialika kufanya medical camp pale Kibra. Hiyo ilikuwa ni medical camp ya Sonko Rescue Team. Kulikuwa na manases warembo wa Sonko Rescue Team. Na kwa sababu Ken alikuwa rafiki yangu, nitakuwa nimemkosea. Mahali ataenda kulala atanichukia, na mimi nilijua ukweli. Ken alipenda Sonko Rescue Team nasa ambaye anaitwa Anita. Hii siasa ya 2017, Ken aliniambia, "Governor, wewe ni rafiki yangu, nominate bibi yangu mdogo Ann Dhumbi kwa bunge la county la Nairobi." Ken mali analala hana raha. Mtoto wake anateseka kabla azikwe. Kwa hivyo mimi naomba recognition kwa niaba ya mtoto ya Ken Okoth.
We start with you, Julie. Because most of this was live and across most of the media houses, if this was playing out on your station and you were calling the shot, would you ask for the live broadcast to stop, or would you let it play on?
Absolutely, absolutely. At best, it was a breach of confidence between friends, assuming that my governor, Sonko, was a friend of Ken Okoth. At worst, it was too much information. It was not in the public interest. We did not need to know. It was a funeral. His wife of 21 years was present. It was not the time to bring up the situation. If he's saying he's looking out for the woman, she had all the time while her child was growing up to find a way for that child to be provided for by the child's father. She did not. She waited until the funeral, and it became a spectacle. It was completely out of order and disrespect. And with all due respect to Mike Sonko, it was not his place to divulge that information to the public. It was none of our business.
And was it in our business to relay the same, because that carried the day?
I would have absolutely put off that broadcast, because now it detracted completely from the funeral of a member of parliament whose wife was present, and shifted our attention to this other woman who we had not met for the duration of his term in office, did not know her or her child, and then made her into focused the story on her, even for her herself and her child. What kind of publicity is that? When her child grows up, what is she going to tell him? What about all the trolls and the social media comments and the blogs who will just throw in his face what happened at his father's funeral, assuming that is his father?
Right.
That is absolute trauma. I think it was just beyond the pale.
You've been an editor before for a station. What would you do in this situation?
I have to start by, before I get, is that yes, there is that quick reaction that you can miss, because it is a normal funeral. You never expect that to happen. So it's normal that an error could have happened. But I would say that critically, and that is why I say, let's not hide behind what you'll do in that situation, because after that, at least every editor in this country has run the clip several times. Therefore, we cannot hide behind the situation. I want to read from our little Bible that things concerning a person's home, family, religion, tribe, health, sexuality, personal life, and private affairs are covered by the concept of privacy, except where they impinge on the public. And the public interest should not merely be used to support morbid curiosity, you know that, and that is here. So yes, you may have failed to act that, because that is, covering certain politicians is a special gift of the spirit you need. But I will judge you not based on whether you cover that or not, because that you can easily defend yourself, isn't it? Did you run the clip several times thereafter? Yes, and therefore I will say don't hide that it was live and you would have pulled it off and all that. You have perpetuated it further.
Okay.
Because people came to the prime time and saying, aliongea, let's wait to see, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you guys replayed it again and again. Right. So let's not hide about a live.
No, he was asking me.
No, she said she would kill it.
I said I would kill the story. He's not saying everybody should have or did.
Yes, what I mean is that ideally it should have been killed. But in the concept of what happens in live shows and all that, especially in unexpected situations. I've been here before when I know we had a rally somewhere and your boss Emmanuel Juma was telling me, Nani is going live on air, suddenly he was shouting at some guy, be on standby because sometimes you expect it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this could have escaped in that situation, isn't it?
But from the moment
but we all
failed.
by running the clip again and again.
Right.
People rushed to prime time and saw it and all that and all that. That was the fail.
Eric, from your standpoint, is this an issue of public interest or just interesting to the public?
First of all, I would say is that it's not a matter of a public interest. Number one, I'm talking about Sonko's statement.
Yes.
And I think this is a huge indictment on the side of the media. Because basically, by right now, journalists or the media houses should already have a strategy on how to cover Mike Sonko. Because Mike Sonko's behavior and characters actually right now is already known by the media. So it means, like David is saying, that anybody who wants to give a Sonko a mic when it's a live broadcast should be always on the standby, and I'll recommend that Sonko should actually be given a delayed signal. So that in the event that he's making such kind of statements, these statements that actually are not relayed to the public. Mm-hmm. And I also agree that replaying these clips, actually it means that actually the media is entertaining Mike Sonko's behavior. So actually this one is a huge indictment on the side of the media for what happened. Having said that, I believe that Ken Okoth is an elected leader, and therefore is a person of public interest. So whatever happens with whatever was going on, the public had an interest and should have known what was going on. And because he was elected, and because when you are elected, you go and you surrender yourself, and you ask people to vote for you and also to trust in everything that you do. Exactly. So the matter that was going on, I think the public had an interest in it and should have known what happened. But the issue is about the manner in which Mike Sonko released that information.
Right. Yeah. And perhaps look at one of these stories, because it's unanimous from the panel that you feel it could have been handled differently. And this is just one of them that was done on Friday, August 2nd. This is a day after. And this is on the Daily Nation. My Secret Love with Ken Okoth. And it was basically telling about the affair, the love affair that Andumbi had with the former Mheshimiwa. And even the word itself, affair, is that getting into breaching that issue of privacy, although he's still a public figure? And where do we strike the balance? I'll start with you, Julie.
I disagree completely. He was a public figure because he was a member of parliament. Insofar as he was doing his work in parliament and for Kibra constituency, that's as much as we needed to know. This was very clearly a private affair. Otherwise, we would have known about it earlier. Why is it coming out now when he's dead and he cannot be defamed, Mm-hmm. So I really do think that... what was your question again about the cover story, Mark?
Well, in the sense, telling this, are we getting into the privacy? Are we breaching or getting into the privacy of people's lives? And are we culpable in any way? Because we would argue this is a public representative and it has ramifications.
I'll take it from this point. From our little book there, the media ethics. When you're covering death and bereavement, you should cover them with sensitivity and discretion. So you should apply your discretion to decide how empathetic you should be to the people who remain here on earth. Mm-hmm. Ken Okoth is dead and buried. We can't defame him, we can't libel him, he's gone. His wife of 21 years is still here. We're impugning her own reputation by revealing secrets of her family. Mm-hmm. Leave alone that the child who's alleged to be Ken Okoth's child is also being exposed in a manner which is an absolute breach of privacy.
Okay.
But look at it this way. I think this headline and this story came from a court process.
Yes.
Because I know this lady went to court.
Yes, she did.
And immediately you go into court, definitely you also, in some level, then you also attracting the public interest in what was going on. So immediately she went to court, and if this story, if I'm correct, it came from court, and some of the information that is there actually was derived from the court papers. And when these papers have been filed in court, they are public documents. So. Yes. at this level, as much as we want to blame the media, but now the way it played out, the media actually had now the opportunity to get into the story.
We could have still have used our discretion to decide whether to report or not, and whether to go the salacious way of talking about my love affair with Ken Okoth, etc., etc. What value does it add to life? In which public interest is it for us to know what happened behind closed doors with Ken Okoth?
To me, Mike, Julie, this is how to look at it. This is not gossip. This is not rumor. This is not innuendo. This is story that is taken from documents that have been filed in court. If it was a story that maybe probably we are just insinuating that this could have happened, you know, that one you could.
Absolutely.
It's
the framing and phrasing of the story which is problematic.
Are we now intruding into grief and shock? The Code of Conduct speaks about.
Yes, I think we are, absolutely.
Intrusion into grief and shock. Right. Number one, yes, you saw this headline you did about my secret love, isn't it? We saw another headline thereafter about a mother saying, "Why did you ban my son?" Isn't it? I mean, what are you seeking to achieve by that? A rather honorable gentleman has died and has been buried or cremated or whatever, and we are causing a lot of havoc because you do this. I have been told even NTV tonight has aired a clip of a coroner with the young boy. He imeonekana twice.
Picture.
Yes, a picture of that.
Picture where he's holding the Jaden.
Are you not exposing a little child to... So the point is now, we have an issue, but are you not dragging other family members you've seen, like the mother?
What to the point of that he brings up? It's in court. And
yes, but the fact that a matter is in court, you know, we don't say that everything you know you must run it, isn't it? The purpose of the Code of Ethics is about discretion and sensitivity, isn't it? So it's about, you will know much more than you will put in the public domain, isn't it? So the matter is in court. We know the mother and all that, isn't it? But we know that there's a lot of conflict around it, isn't it? There's too much attachment to this. In one forum, there was a strange headline, I think was it this morning or yesterday, about why you burnt my son and all that. And in one forum of journalists, I saw extremely emotional journalists explaining and all that. And you're supposed to know, journalists must find a way of being fairly independent out of it. So I think what has happened is that, because we have our cultures and all that, we have gotten our priorities and professionalism all mixed up. There has been too much emotion, and in that confusion, the Code of Ethics has been buried, and it's been very unfair.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do not operate in isolation. And that's why I'm saying that this matter was in court and it played out in court. And we know very well that matters of such nature, when they go to court, the court actually has a discretion. And sometimes, because there are so many of such stories that actually happen in court and they're not reported. But this matter, actually, the court allowed journalists to cover it. So it means that journalists actually were within the law and the required standards actually that they operate under. What I wouldn't want probably to comment about is headlines that came after the cremation took place. That was on Saturday. But anything that happened between Thursday and Friday, I think journalists were still operating within the required standards.
No one is saying they were not allowed to report. Yes, the matter is discretion. Why are you reporting this story? I know it's a good story. Obviously it is. It's got drama, there's conflict, there's tragedy, there's intrigue. Of course, it's a good story, but why are you reporting it? Is it in the public interest? It is absolutely not. Let me defend that story. You know, this is not the first time we are having such stories. These stories have been there before. Yes. Similar stories, where when a prominent leader or when a politician dies, and such stories actually they came up, and we've covered them. So I don't see why we wouldn't cover these stories. Are we saying we're covering it because there's precedent?
No, there's precedent, and there's, you know, once you've, as a politician, once you've surrendered yourself and you occupied a public space, you must also know the consequences that come with that.
You don't give up your entire life.
Once you become,
you don't give up your entire life.
Guys, something of riding this, because Eric is trying to make it look very legal and the court and all that. The Code of Ethics speaks about discretion and sensitivity. It's not in a law. You are not going to be taken to court. It's about drugging an old mother, a widow here, perhaps a child, and very many emotional friends and relatives, isn't it? Because there was, I know the story was juicy because there was a lot of conflict around it. We had, there was a story about different various places and all that, isn't it? But at a point when we go to sleep on Friday, we do not know where this guy will be buried anyway. I think that's the point where now the word discretion comes in, because there's a child, there's a mother, there is a widow, or there's then another lady involved, isn't it? That's the point where now you don't kill the story, but be sensitive.
The way you frame the story is very important.
I think that we are mixing these two issues. There are two issues here. Issue number one, there's a boat reporting the death of Ken Okoth, and also the issues that actually also came up after the death.
Yes.
Then there's a second one about the cremation, which also has its own story and its own angle.
Its own issues.
So yes, so what you are talking about, I'm talking about the death of a member of parliament who was elected, and their his constituents also had a lot of interest of what's happening. So that is a different story.
Okay, so you're not talking about the Sonko angle.
I'm not talking about the Sonko angle. I said the Sonko angle, the media actually is heavily indicted on that, because I said someone like Sonko, the media right now should have already come up with a strategy of how they are going to cover Sonko, especially when he has a live mic.
To that, let me direct a question that is addressing that, or questioning that thinking. Okay. This is Benjin Dolo. What is it with this emerging and prevailing misplaced culture of political correctness at the expense of truth? What manner should Sonko have used? A press conference after the deceased has been cremated? Come on. In terms of him bringing out what he brought out at that...
Mark, even as journalists, when we are trained, there is a way how we break news. And we don't break news the way Sonko did it. There is a way how you want to break news so that you do not surprise, or you do not actually cause harm. Let me say the word cause harm when you're breaking that news. And what is coming out, that when Sonko was breaking this news, as much as it could have excited members of the public, but we must also know that this news also actually could have also caused harm to other people, especially the immediate family members. So Sonko, being a leader, he should know how he's going to break news. He's not, maybe he might not have the art of breaking news. Exactly. Yeah. So for him, even if he had that information, and I know people have had secrets of people who have died, but there is a way how the news and information is conveyed to the concerned party. You don't go out there and start opening your mouth and you think that that is going to help.
All right, just before I take a break, and this, you said the setting was not appropriate, bringing up all these issues. What if this lady who claims to have a child with the late Mheshimiwa came up right after? She would be, dismissed as either gold digger, and perhaps in her defense, it was very strategic in bringing it up right now. That it gets most attention.
Yeah, it was extremely strategic because all the cameras were on that. Okay, half of them, the other ones were in Rift Valley, but a lot of press was on that story at that particular time. People loved Ken Okoth. He had been ailing for a long time. He had finally passed. It was a national story. It was the perfect time for her to come out. My problem with that is he had a terminal illness. If she was indeed his wife and had born his child, she would have known that he had a terminal illness and he was going to pass. Yes. She had those months or years to figure all these things out. Who's going to provide for my child? Is he in your will if you have a will? Is he going to inherit any of your property? As far as we know, if he is his Ken Okoth's son, he's the only son, biological son, as far as we know. So why live in the shadows until the day he dies and then ask somebody whose place it is not to break the news to announce it on a national platform? It immediately calls into question your motives.
But so real quick, first of all, I need to take a break and then we'll...
Yes, I know that I think we shouldn't, on press pass, we shouldn't bother about how a politician behaves. Our politicians behave the way they want. We should be very careful about how will we as the media behave. Either we have live cameras and mics or we are doing the subsequent stories, so that we don't discuss about how they disclose. Politicians, we know them. They're going to do whatever they want, isn't it? We are the gatekeepers on this side. We are holding the cameras and the mics and the feeders, isn't it? What will we do? And should we already be preparing a certain list of the yellow guys and red guys who whenever they're on the mic, someone holds, so that you delay? I think that should be. Otherwise, about how people disclose and all that.
Well, Mark asked me the question.
Well, yes, I'm saying we should discuss about what do we do? We are seated on this side, isn't it?
And besides, Sonko
what do we do when someone goes haywire? And we know that Sonko is not alone in this list. We have a list of about 4 or 5 who ran, isn't it?
Right.
And I know we have a check, even in this newsroom, about 2-3 people. Maybe we should have included Sonko already in that list and don't remove people from the red list until they have consistently changed. Because I think what has happened here is that politicians shout anything. I know we don't carry a lot of that, isn't it?
Yes.
Now we just happened they shouted and we were not holding the fader, isn't it? We should just be careful next time. I think we should concentrate about how we...
Agreed.
There's a question though of whether there can be distancing ourselves from the allegations, because it played out at an editorial meeting that week that I was part of, and I'll explain just to see if that's how we could also treat it and let it take a life of its own and report it as it goes on and as it develops, and then get to the facts, because this story will get to the end of it in terms of the tests will be done, the DNA test will be done, and we'll find out whether it was true or not.
And I think that's what happened. If you look at how the journalists covered the story, other than the live broadcast that came from Sonko, I think journalists the following day, they went with the process that was going on in court and what happened. Then the following day, as the story now developed, and it was about the cremation, you see. So actually the media has allowed the story to take a life of its own, only that probably there was some disruption within. So
yes.
We wouldn't want to blame journalists so much, because some of these things, when they happen, we are talking about of unknown right now. We do not have the full information that probably Ken could have had with his mother, the information, the conversation that Ken probably had with the widow, the conversation that Ken had with Sonko, the conversation that Ken also had with Anne. So right now we are reacting to information that actually has been in the public domain. We do not know some of these, maybe the details.
Yes.
So for us as the media, we go with what is there. Probably right now, we'll now be hoping that probably journalists can go again deeper and try to unearth some of this information, what happened. But as the moment, like they say, probably at the moment it could have been wrong for us now to go and start digging.
There's a lot of probablys in your sentence there. We'll come back to certain conclusion of this issue, and not probablys, but yes, just to get our view from the panel on this issue before we get into the deteriorating picture of press freedom in Tanzania. But the conversation still continues after the break.
Wake up to nothing but the best in news, conversation starters, and hard-hitting interviews that keep you informed for the day ahead.
Up and early, 6 on the nose, these people don't sleep. Fix first the data protection law, then we come up with the number.
Exactly my question to CS Joe Mushero.
Welcome to Living With Us. I'm your host, Sharon Mundia. Boy, have you missed out.
Stop your wheel, game done.
Thank you for joining us on NTV today.
We have our reporters in different locations.
NTV is right here to bring you everything from the beginning to the end.
Hii ni NTV Sasa.
Kuna mambo mengi sana ambayo yanafanyika.
Sasa ni kumtuliza. Hii inaitwa sensory integration.
Shughuli pevu ya kudunda viwanjani narejea kwake
na kurudisha hapa studioni.
Kuna mengi ambayo yanaendelea kujiri katika maeneo tofauti.
Tunavyoelewa wanasema nini? Vimeundwa.
NTV in the morning. All you need to know to start your day.
Jinunulie nakala yako ya gazeti la Taifa Leo kila siku ya Jumatatu hadi Jumamosi. Kwa kufanya hivyo, utanufaika pakubwa kwa maswali ya mitihani ya marudio kwa masomo yote yanayotahiniwa shuleni. Soma gazeti lako la Taifa Leo. Taifa Leo, gazeti langu, lugha yangu.
On the edge, it is always football time.
Get an HD decoder, dish kit, plus 2 months of DSTV Family for only 4,999 shillings.
Welcome back to Press Pass. The conversation has been on the story on Ken Okoth. In fact, the life it took after his passing on. May his soul rest in peace. And this is especially after the revelations of some details about whether or not the Mheshimiwa, the late, had a love affair with a Nairobi MCA, and they had a child with that particular lady. And Muganda Clay, as he follows the conversation, says the matter in court was about the child. I believe this is in response to you, not the secret love affair. So how do we separate this?
I think there is no way you can separate, because a child is a product of that love affair.
Right.
Unless we are being told that the child dropped from heaven, but at least the child was a product of the love affair. So you cannot separate the two.
But the substance of the affair was not before the court.
No,
it was the child, and looking for provision for that child post.
Exactly, but you see, a child is a product of another process.
Yes.
It was a love affair. I mean, so we cannot separate the two.
But in court you definitely can. You're just talking about this child who happens to be born, and his father could have been Ken Okoth.
Right. And you know, the reason this comes up and the issue of public interest is, and many have responded and said, Governor Sonko alikuwa anapigania wanyonge. You know, this is an issue that plays out for many women who have children out of wedlock and they don't have the support. And this was a chance for media to actually inform people in such situations what their rights are.
I have no problem with someone fighting for the weak or for the helpless. Like we said, in trade union tunapigania wale wasio na uwezo, wale wanyonge, wale wana bunduki, wala pesa. So Sonko as a leader has got various platforms and various options at his disposal which he can use to address this matter, if indeed he was a friend of the late Ken Okoth. Sio kumwanika and coming out publicly to make that statement. If he's a leader, there's a different options. If he didn't have, he could have sought the services of some of us here. We could have probably advised him on how to go about that.
Oh,
there was ways out there.
He's talking to people.
Yes, I'm saying that's exactly because there is a way how a leader is supposed to carry himself, how a leader is supposed to address issues, not in a casual manner how he addressed it. That's what I'm saying.
And to respond to something that you brought up, and I think it's Huro or Huro Mwangi, you say delayed signals won't work for Mike Sonko because he'll record audios and post them on social media. Journalists will rush there and compete on who will capture it first.
Well, nevertheless, I refer to our Observer issue number 20 that has come out this evening, the weekly publication by the Media Council.
Yes.
Our story number 1 is that when editors turn into mourners, journalism suffers. We lose the issues and we rush into personalizing. Number 1, the failure, as they moved to court and reported about this lady who moved to court and all that, I will question, did the newspaper or did the media highlight what the act said or how this matters? No, we just brought those issues and forgot. Ideally, we would have forgiven and said it was objective if you say this person has moved to court and normally, and then say normally in such cases, which have been many in this country, the law has these provisions, isn't it? We did not get that. We just threw the juicy bits of what was happening and we rushed. Secondly, about Sonko and all that, we have been here before and spoken about the rush to beat social media and all that, isn't it? We are talking about the objectivity of a credible media house, isn't it? So it's not about delaying. We are not asking social media to delay and all that. Social media will be managed by their own
Not even social media to delay. You might delay it, you might black it out.
Yes.
He will post it somewhere, and then it'll still get the attention.
But just the same way, when you delay him when he hurls insults or any other person, isn't it?
Yes.
That you have not stopped him from hurling insults along the streets when he was going around Nation Center, isn't it? You just have not amplified his voice.
Given him a platform.
Yeah, that's all you need. You know, I mean, there are many things that happen that are not given platform in media houses, isn't it? Incredible media houses. So your work, you don't say that let's just give a platform to this dirty stuff because they will be heard anyway. Do your part, isn't it?
Exactly. And you see, even to add to that, Mark and David, we've seen even, I think recently, Mike Sonko was being interviewed in a talk show, but the talk show was stopped. And he went on to go and do a live broadcast on social media.
Yeah.
And that did not bother people. And people actually were happy with that, the decision that was made by that particular media house. So as much as Sonko went ahead to do a live Facebook, that did not bother people. So long as the journalist or the media house took action as required to stop him from misusing the platform, that is what we are supposed to do as journalists. What you do after there, that is none of our business for us. So long as we stop you from using our platform to spread the hate speech or propaganda, then as in the media, we've done our job.
Okay, and uncomfortable as it might be, was this an opportunity to bring into, the fore that, their rights for those who have children out of wedlock and perhaps someone isn't taking out responsibility or whatever the case might be, just to shape that conversation?
Yes, I like the term you're using, children out of wedlock.
Yes.
Children outside of, yes, I understand what you're saying, because she did have options. Under the laws of Kenya, under the Constitution, the Children's Act, and the law of succession in this country, even before he died. Even right now, if she can prove, and I'm sure she can, if that is in fact Ken Okoth's child, that the child was a dependent of Ken Okoth immediately before he passed, that he was caring for him and providing for him, paying for his school fees and his healthcare, etc. The court will consider that and allow him, perhaps allow him to inherit.
Yes.
She could have argued that Okoth took him into the fold as one of his family members, even if he was not a biological son. I don't know the facts. We'll have to find find that out later. That was redress for her before the law. There's been talk about a will. I'm not so sure if there's a will or not. We'll find out in eventuality. But he could have provided for that child in the will as well. So it's not like this woman was absolutely helpless. Of course, the fastest and easiest way to get the attention of the courts and the press and the country was to interrupt the funeral in the manner in which she did by way of our governor. So it's not, these are things that people should understand. If you have a child out of wedlock, if you're a single, let me say, unmarried parent, if you're in a situation where you're not married to the father or the mother of your child, you should have these discussions while you're both still alive. Not wait for a funeral and then interrupt it all to bring up this issue when you had ample time to sort it, and also make yourself very much acquainted with the redress available to you and your children in the event that your spouse dies. And the laws of succession in this country, the rights of the child, are so strong as to mean that any child of a man or woman can inherit if that can be proven in various ways, and it's not that hard to prove.
So with that argument or that perspective in mind, is this, I go back, an issue of public interest?
It is, I say from the beginning, it is not our business what the deceased was doing in his private life. It's not of our business.
Right.
It is their business. The alleged wife, alleged child, the wife who was married to him for 21 years, the adopted children, and Ken Okoth, that was their business as a family. We have no need to know. For me knowing and us knowing, how does that change the price of sliced bread or the price of cocoa in Ghana? It does not. It's an interesting story. I admit it's a newsworthy story. But use discretion. Have some empathy. Have some sensitivity for funeral proceedings and people who are involved in the grieving process.
Okay.
That's as much as I would say about
Mr. Moyo, what if a media house, and at NTV we did try on that particular night to distance ourselves and say at the onset that for a function that was meant to be mourning the life of Ken Okoth, the politicians took over and it took a different direction, and this is a report of the day which captured partly what Sonko had said. Does that suffice? Because we distance ourselves and say it's not that we agree with the sentiments.
No, you are trying to behave like lawyers who start by saying the matter is very clear and then confuse everybody up to that.
Okay.
Because we are not discussing Sonko now here. We are discussing about what does a media house do when you get into an embarrassing situation. The entire nation is watching you and someone decides to strip naked, for example. A leader decides to strip naked. What do? You say we have no help now, you see you're stripped and it's national and all that. No, you fed out. So what I mean is that from our end, we failed to be professional and serve the public. And number two, I think we got too emotionally attached. And on that one, I say we have this media house and another media house. I could name them because as forget about the platform, the standard. There's been too much emotional attachment in the story until the issues haven't come out. So without, I'm careful not to go into what the law says and all that. We are just discussing about the media conduct. We need to have step outside the story a bit and look at it, because when you become very deeply engrossed into the story, you become part of the mourners and all that. Okay. We could have a bit of the life experiences as a side column, but not the reporting of facts and what happened, because then you get lost in it. As I said, is that as you reported what happened, the media refused to contextualize such issues and ended up just getting into very private matters. I mean, nobody has told us about the wife, how they met, how these 21 years. Nobody has told about the MCA and all that. His stories about, nobody has told us about the child. No, these allegations being made across, isn't it? The media saying some allegations have been made, somebody has to say, isn't it? Go out and get a few facts, but ideally, respect families in mourning.
Right.
Because what you're seeing is just morbid stuff that is simply feeding curiosity, not driving the narrative forward and not helping to calm family is in mourning, because the truth is that there's a lot of conflict.
Yes.
And people like the mother and the widow are really affected.
Yes.
And we're just spinning it on and on and on and on and leaving the issues away. I think that was a dangerous matter, and I think whether you want to separate yourselves from it or not, you are held responsible, because if Sonko, for example, stripped, you are going to switch him off at some point. So you didn't. So
unless he was protesting like Stella Nyanzi, then we would just broadcast the whole thing.
So, you won't get a green from me. There was a failure in checks and measures, but I know, well, a forgivable one. What cannot be forgiven is the continuous highlighting. We have not learned and realized, guys, we think we have gone too far.
Yes.
Let's find a way of, get round the story, leave let the family to solve their matters, all right?
Okay.
Don't pit the mother against the wife, some elders in Homa Bay against some people, so eventually, it's just dirty.
All right.
Find a way, let the family sort their matters. Like the way I remember the family of the late Governor Laboso requested for privacy.
Yes.
Sometimes you need to respect people's privacy around some matters and manage your audience's curiosity and cover some other story.
And in respect to that, unless there's any burning issue or point to that effect, let's move on to the other one. And again, I'm sure the panel echoes this condolences to the family. May his soul, that is of Ken Okoth, rest in eternal peace. On to another concerning development from a neighboring Tanzania, where a journalist, Eric Kabendera, was earlier today charged with economic crimes a week after his arrest. Kabendera is accused of knowingly assisting in the conduct of a criminal racket with intent to reap profit or other benefits. The journalist is also accused of failing to pay tax of 173.2 million Tanzania shillings, which is about 7.8 million shillings. He is also further accused of laundering the same amount, and his arrest came as a surprise as he was set to appear at the court for his bail hearing after police said they were investigating his citizenship. The journalist allegedly committed the offenses between January 2015 and July of this year. However, according to a statement by his lawyers, Kabendera was to be charged with sedition in connection to an article published in The Economist about the nation's president entitled, "John Magufuli is bulldozing Tanzania's freedom." Now, Eric Odor, as the Secretary General of Kenya Union of Journalists, this definitely sends some shockwaves to you as a neighboring country. And he's also a colleague because he contributes to the East African. Your response?
Yes, obviously what is happening in Tanzania is worrying. We've seen a number of cases of anti-press freedom trend in Tanzania. We've seen the government try to come up with laws to limit the press freedom. We've seen the government has even tried to close down and ban the newspapers in Tanzania. So definitely what is coming out about Kabendera is not surprising, because we know Tanzania is gearing up for elections next year. And as things are right now, Magufuli has actually stopped any political activity until when a campaign period will be announced. And most people are eager to know what is happening in Tanzania, and Eric has been one of the prolific writers in Tanzania when it comes to politics.
Yes.
So he has really tried to analyze the politics, what's happening in Tanzania. I know the last article he also analyzed if Magufuli is going to run against himself. So those are some of the stories that we know could have actually landed him in trouble, because we did not believe what is going on. If you look at the charges that were preferred on him against him today, contrary to what was there before, because before we were talking about the government was investigating his citizenship, like you've said. Right now, he's now a member of an organized and criminal gang. He's being accused of money laundering. He's being accused of tax evasion. So definitely the first attempt failed, and therefore the government could not sustain charges and actually his prosecution. So the government had to go again back to the drawing board and try to come up with the trump-up charges on how they can actually nail him. So what is happening in Tanzania is just the continuous clampdown on the media and the opposition.
Right. And Julie, you're privy to the word, precedent. And in terms of precedent for the region, one leader sees this happening there, and they feel, oh, it's actually something that we can do. And initially, I mean, when Magufuli came into power, there was a lot of hope in terms of his leadership, and you know, he's really come down hard on media and media freedom since he took up leadership.
Since he came in 2015, yes, and people had hope. For Kikwete was only marginally better than Magufuli.
Yes.
He was also accused of criminalizing journalists and journalism and introducing laws that curtailed the freedom of the press and freedom of expression. So Magufuli was kind of like your Donald Trump candidate, like the maverick who's going to come and shake things up and make things better. But he's just become another typical strong, these are strongman antics.
Yes.
And in Rwanda, in Burundi, where you can't even print cartoons of the leaders, in Uganda, we all know what happens there how websites and newspapers get shut down. In Tanzania, this is what we're seeing as well. Ethiopia was on the same trajectory, but since Abiy came into power, things seem to be changing. What I think we need to do as a region, the Horn and East Africa, is strengthen our institutions, like the unions of journalists and the media councils as a region, and make sure that when we speak for one, we speak for all.
Yes.
The ones who can't speak up for themselves, they need to be propped up and they need to be supported, because some people have lesser voices than other people. So, for example, Tanzania's press freedom, on the press freedom index, they've dropped 25 places since last year. They're now 118th out of 180. And it's been progressively falling. And the world is taking notice of this. The world has taken notice of our region, basically. Rwanda and Burundi are probably the worst cases. So if we could come together outside of governance structures as journalists who are in unions and councils and speak in one voice, this might help to stem the tide of the press freedom that we are losing. If somebody doesn't say something, it's clearly going to get to us.
Yeah, and I mean, we definitely want to hear from the Media Council. We thought we saw it all with Zori Gwanda, and I mean, his whereabouts still in question. What is the position of Media Council on the situation in Tanzania?
I think what we in the media and colleagues need to learn is crackdowns on the media don't happen in isolation. There will be a crackdown on the opposition, crackdowns on civil society, and all independent voices. That is a standard pattern across. So the media happens to be among the human rights defenders networks normally, and they will be cracked down on, because if you go to Tanzania, well, we have a disappeared journalist. I think we have about 2 or 3 disappeared politicians too. We have media houses shut down. We have 4 or 5 NGOs totally shut down and all that. So usually it is a system. What we need to move into is understand the systems, especially the strong systems that work, that come into power, and because it seems to be there is certain countries are moving forward, others are moving backwards, and build strong networks so that then we are able to counter that, because it's also very hard. We have been here before. Sometimes very hard to move against state actors unless you're very strong. Look at our colleagues in the US and see how they are suffering and all that. So I will call that we must organize ourselves and build strong, resilient institutions, and also especially safety networks and safety spaces to be able to isolate, profile, and bring to safe houses some colleagues, especially in the region. I know we have worked on a bit with KUJ, and we are trying to work with our colleagues in Uganda and Tanzania. I think a point is going to come where critical journalists in the Human Rights Defenders Network need to be evacuated and hidden for a while so that hate comes down, because eventually, as you've mentioned, Gwanda, who I think someone by mistake say, oh, he died, and then say, no, he did not die, and all that. We need to be very careful that at some point you need to immediately evacuate certain colleagues so they can come back to fight another day, because sometimes when the system is cracking down, it is ruthless.
Right.
And we know when we have in a country where the opposition is silenced, civil society is silenced, and I've seen the charge sheet. I am not sure whether I want to comment about it, but so things get very tricky. So we need to get into, certain people can give policy defenses and advisories. Unions and strategic civil society actors must, I know we had a certain network of safe houses across the region.
Yes.
We could evacuate Kenyans across to Tanzania and all that. We need to reactivate that
Okay.
and make sure we don't close them, because the challenge is that these things come under donor-funded projects which disappear after a while, after the election, and then something happening 30 days after elections, nobody knows what to do. So I think the network of defenders of journalists and other human rights networks must be really strengthened.
Okay, time is not on our side. I just need to get a position. As KUJ, I believe even as Conversation Africa and the Media Council, because you haven't quite answered that question as Media Council of Kenya, this is what we say about this. But I'll start with you, and as we end, you'll also talk about the program that will be going on in the conversations this week that I believe all of us will be on this coming week. Your position as KUJ on this matter, have you reached out to your counterparts there, and what is being said?
Yes, our position as KUJ and as the Eastern Africa Journalists Association, we've already condemned this, and our statement is out there. And actually, we are asking, our statement is simply asking for the intervention of the international community to have a look at what is happening in Tanzania, because the situation in Tanzania is worrying. Unfortunately, the Union of Journalists in Tanzania had been deregistered, so we are again trying to help them. I've been very instrumental that to help them register another union, which already been granted registration, and right now is they are still operating under an interim certificate and interim official. So it's also very difficult actually to work on that, because definitely sometimes the government, when they want to clamp down on you, they start by weakening institutions. So as we speak, we are speaking of a union of journalists that actually is still operating under an interim certificate. So it's very difficult, but as our colleagues, we've been supporting them and will continue supporting them. But our position is that given the situation in Tanzania, the international community actually needs to intervene and see how we can apply pressure and continuously monitor what is happening in Tanzania, so that the situation does not get out of hand.
Right. It already has, actually, in many people's views.
Well, basically, as a conversation, what we do is we publish evidence-based articles. So, of course, our eyes have been on the entire region, people who are on the ground doing studies, observing if things are getting better or worse, basically pinpointing the points in history where things started going downhill or uphill. So we've published quite a number of stories, both here in Africa and different websites around the world. And the point is to present to the government the evidence and show them the benefit of a free press for the economy and just for the human dignity of the people. And we continue to do that. And I think that's also a very essential part of the entire story, is making people see that there's a different way to do things and there are benefits. So government should not be as afraid as they are of a free press, because in the long run it's of benefit to the government and to the people as well.
All right. And Omoyo, finally?
Yes, you were saying that we have not...
I'm talking about here on the show. I mean, Sonrek, and these are things that can be on replay over and over again. Yes.
Of course, we are extremely appalled and shocked at the crackdown on press freedoms in neighboring Tanzania. This evening, about 2 hours ago, I spoke to my colleague, the Media Council of Tanzania, Kajubi Mkajanga. He was supposed to join us later this week for the media summit, but he won't come because of what is happening. But you see, again, as I said earlier, is that sometimes state actors are very tricky. Like I'm looking at the charge sheet now. They have not mentioned any publication or any journalistic work. By doing that, they immediately lock out any of the media actors out of it. This is about tax evasion, money laundering, and all that. So there are all those tricks, and that's why I spoke about strong networks to be able to respond. So we will, I have a very close bond with Tanzania. I'll probably be paying him a visit. I've been there very many times. He has been in our office many times to try assist them. I think this is a point where you try to look for strategic soft spots, because you are journalists and you're not being, there's no crime about you. You're just getting a few issues, even the Kabendera issue and the other gentleman issues. So I think this is a point when they need moral support and strategic financial backup and a lot of thinking to try and loosen, because if journalists get arrested and they're charged with traffic offenses, you can only imagine why they have been taken in, and this is a very tricky situation. You can't issue a statement against this. I mean, you have seen the charge sheet. It's about tax evasion. They mentioned money and the debts and the banks. So you need to really find, it's a very tricky situation that we need to act on. We will, I will hear, because we wanted him to come and tell us what is happening. He thinks that we should go there. So we will try, because the whole idea is that one person's challenge is another person's challenge. We had a case in our neighboring country, Sudan. A journalist was arrested last week also. They were supposed to join us. We have not agreed whether they should tell us their experience anymore. So there are all those challenges really about, especially the Sudan were more blunt, they put it, but then when we have very crafty governments, it gets very hard. So for people who are in journalism and press freedom, we need to get more organized and know that these freedoms are never given for free. We must find a way of defending ourselves.
You said they're missing the conference. Really quick about the conference, because I believe it's very important.
Yes, we have the annual media summit.
Yes.
Starting on the 8th. It's on media accountability and democracy. We have several panels, more than 10 panels, discussing different areas.
Among them here?
Yes, among them here. And I think you're attending the CEO of the Nation Media Group is coming. We have 3 ambassadors from the US, Germany, and Canada, and many other guys coming from Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, South
And I believe
Africa.
this issue will take center stage as well.
Yes. I mean, we are even the journalists who have disappeared and arrested and all that. We're going to be honoring them and discussing about the challenges facing the media in the region.
Okay.
And then on Friday in the evening, we are doing the Journalist of the Year award, where we are awarding excellence in journalism across the year, because we want to promote professionalism, quality, and public-centered journalism. So people are invited. It's not an entirely open set, but anybody who works in this space, you are invited. It will be the largest media activity that has happened in the Eastern Africa region in the recent past.
All right.
Yes.
And I mean, I won't be surprised if I see Press Pass having won an award. I'm just playing. But we are really going to be following that keenly, because there's a lot of work that's done by journalists across the board, whichever station you're talking about, and even on the papers. I mean, most of us get the credit because we're in front of the cameras, but there are many people who are working hours on end, working on stories for the papers, and they don't get the recognition. And we appreciate the fact that they will be recognized this particular week, and all the best with that conference, and as well to my panelists who will be there. Thank you for allowing me to keep you here quite late. Perhaps your boss will allow you to go to work a bit later if they can hear this. My name is Mark Masai. It's been a pleasure doing Press Pass this episode with you. Let's do it again next week, and all the best to Kabendera. If you can just see a picture of him here, we are standing with you, Eric Kabendera. He is a journalist in Tanzania, the one we've been talking about, and this was a story we borrowed heavily from by Dorothy Ndalu of the East African. Eric there being ushered by being shown around by one of the police officers as he was being arrested or taken to through the cells. And yes, we will follow this particular story to its end, and we won't forget Azori Gwanda. We stand with you. Have a good night.